Hey everyone, welcome back to Learn English Buddy. I'm Emma.
And I'm Daniel.
Daniel, can I start with a confession?
Please do. Those are usually the best stories.
Okay, so this morning I was busy for over an hour and somehow still didn't do the one thing I actually meant to do.
That's such a specific kind of pain.
It really is. I woke up, I went into the kitchen, and all I wanted was coffee. That was the plan. Very simple. Make coffee, start the day, be a functioning human being.
Solid plan.
Thank you. But then I saw one dirty dish in the sink.
Uh-oh.
Exactly. And I thought, oh, I'll just wash this really quickly. Very innocent thought. Very dangerous thought.
Those are always the dangerous ones, the really quickly thoughts.
Right? Because then I saw another dish, then a cup, then a spoon. Then I noticed the counter looked kind of messy. And before I knew it, I was fully cleaning the kitchen like I was starring in some home organization video.
That is painfully relatable.
Thank you. And the worst part is, 1 hour later, my kitchen looked great, but I still didn't have coffee and I was running late.
So technically you accomplished something,
Technically.
but not the thing you actually needed to do.
Exactly. And I feel like that happens all the time. You're doing things, you're moving, you're being active, but you're not doing the thing that matters most in that moment.
Yeah, that happens to me on my laptop all the time. I sit down to work and I tell myself, okay, before I start, let me just check one thing.
That sentence has ruined so many lives.
It really has, because it's never one thing. It's one message, then one video, then one article, and then somehow I'm reading comments under a video I didn't even mean to click on.
And suddenly, it's 45 minutes later.
Exactly. And then I get that awful feeling where I'm like, wait, what have I actually been doing?
Yes, that feeling. And I think that's why today's topic is such a real one.
It really is.
Because today, we're talking about how to stop wasting time and stay focused.
Which honestly sounds simple, but it's one of those things that almost everybody struggles with.
Totally. And I think what makes it hard is that we usually imagine focus as this big, dramatic thing. Like you sit down, the room is silent, your mind is clear, you become this perfect machine and you just work for 3 hours straight.
Yeah, like some kind of productivity superhero.
Exactly. And for most people, that's just not real life.
No, real life is way messier than that. Real life is I'm trying to answer an email, but my phone buzzed, my coffee got cold, and now I'm somehow looking up the best desk lamps on the internet.
That is way too real.
I know.
So maybe that's where we should start, not with some perfect version of focus, but with what distraction actually looks like in everyday life.
I like that because I think a lot of people feel guilty about this stuff.
Yes, and quickly too. Like, why can't I just do what I said I was going to do?
Or why do I keep wasting time?
Exactly. And I think sometimes we jump straight to judging ourselves. We say, I'm lazy, or I have no discipline, or I'm terrible at focusing.
When really, sometimes the problem is a lot more ordinary than that.
Right. Sometimes the problem is just that the world is full of distractions, and we're not setting ourselves up very well.
That's such a good way to put it, because distraction is not always some deep character flaw. Sometimes it's literally just that your phone is sitting right next to you, lighting up every 2 minutes.
Exactly. And honestly, I think the phone is the biggest one for a lot of people.
Oh, for sure. It's the easiest trap. You pick it up for one reason, and then 5 minutes later, you're doing something completely different.
Or 10 reasons, or 20.
Right. And the thing is, we don't even think of it as a big decision. It feels tiny. I'm just checking something. But that tiny decision can completely shift your attention.
Yes, and once your attention moves, it can be really hard to get it back.
That's the part people underestimate. It's not just the 30 seconds you spend checking the notification, it's the mental reset after that.
Exactly. It's like your brain has to sit back down again.
That's such a good description.
Thank you. And I think this is where people get frustrated. They think, why can't I just focus? But if your attention keeps getting pulled away, of course it's hard to go deep into anything.
Yeah, and that's why I started thinking about focus less as a personality trait and more as an environment thing.
Interesting. Say more.
Well, if I'm trying to work and my phone is on the desk, my email is open, there are 10 tabs open in my browser, and something is playing in the background, that version of me is not set up to focus. I'm basically daring myself to get distracted.
That's so true. You're making focus fight against everything else,
Exactly. And then when I lose focus, I act surprised.
which is kind of unfair to yourself, actually.
Very unfair.
I've been thinking about that a lot lately. This idea that sometimes we expect ourselves to use pure willpower for things that actually need structure.
Yes, that's such an important distinction.
Because people love saying things like, you just need more discipline. And sure, discipline matters, but sometimes what you really need is a better system.
Absolutely. Like sometimes the smartest thing is not to fight temptation, it's to move temptation farther away.
Which brings us back to the phone.
Always back to the phone.
Always.
I'm curious, what do you do when you really need to focus?
Honestly, the biggest thing for me is making the task smaller and clearer. If I tell myself, I need to get my whole life together today, my brain immediately wants to run away.
Fair.
But if I say, okay, what are the 3 most important things I need to do today, that feels much more manageable.
I love that. 3 feels human.
Exactly. 3 feels possible. 3 feels like a day, not a punishment.
That's so true. I think long to-do lists can actually make people less productive because the list itself becomes stressful.
Yes, you look at it and immediately feel behind.
Right, and then instead of starting, you end up doing something easier so you can at least feel like you did something.
Which is how I ended up cleaning the kitchen instead of making coffee.
Exactly. The easy, visible task wins over the important one.
That's such a good point. Because sometimes we don't avoid work entirely, we just replace meaningful work with easier work.
Yes, and the replacement task usually has one big advantage. It gives quick satisfaction.
Right. Cleaning something feels productive. Answering a message feels productive. Organizing a folder feels productive.
But it may not move your actual life forward in that moment.
Exactly. So I've started asking myself a very simple question. What matters most right now?
Ooh, I like that.
Because it pulls me back. It reminds me that there's a difference between being active and being focused.
That might be the core idea of this whole episode, honestly.
I think so too.
And once you know what matters most, how do you actually stay with it?
For me, I really like working in short blocks. Nothing dramatic, just, okay, for the next 25 minutes, this is the only thing I'm doing.
Same. That works so much better for me than trying to feel motivated for an entire afternoon.
Exactly. 25 minutes feels doable. It doesn't scare you.
Right. If I tell myself, you need to focus hard for the next 3 hours, some part of me immediately wants to lie down and give up.
Same. But 25 minutes? That feels reasonable. That feels like, okay, I can do that.
And I think that's why it works. It lowers the emotional resistance. You're not asking yourself to become a different person, you're just asking yourself to stay with one thing for a short amount of time.
Yes. And that feels way more realistic.
It really does. And I also think short focus blocks help because they make starting easier.
Which is huge because starting is often the hardest part.
Always.
There's so many times when the task itself isn't even that bad. It's just the beginning that feels heavy.
Yes, that's procrastination in a nutshell sometimes. It's not that the task is impossible, it's that the task feels unpleasant to begin.
Or too big, or too vague, or maybe you're worried you won't do it well.
Exactly. And I think that's important because people talk about procrastination like it's always laziness, and I really don't think that's true.
I don't either. A lot of procrastination is emotional. It's avoidance.
Yes, avoidance is the perfect word. You're not necessarily resting, you're avoiding the discomfort of starting.
That is painfully accurate.
Which is why one thing that helps me a lot is saying, I'm just going to do this for 5 minutes.
I love that approach.
Because 5 minutes doesn't feel threatening. 5 minutes doesn't ask too much of me. 5 minutes is like, just begin, just open the document, just write a few lines, just read one page.
And once you start, it's so much easier to keep going.
Exactly. Not always, but often.
And even if you don't keep going, 5 minutes is still better than 0.
100%. And I think that matters more than people realize. Because every time you actually do the thing you said you were going to do, even in a small way, you build trust with yourself.
Yes, that's the deeper part of all this.
Totally.
Because when I waste time all day, the problem isn't just that I lost time, I also start feeling disappointed in myself.
Same. And that feeling can build. It can make the next day harder, too.
Exactly, because then you start thinking, well, I always do this, or I'm bad at this, or I can't focus.
Yes, and those stories we tell ourselves are powerful.
Very powerful.
Which is why I think small wins matter so much. Not because they're flashy, but because they slowly change the story in your head.
That's beautifully said.
Thank you. But I really believe that. If you keep making tiny promises to yourself and keeping them, your brain starts to believe you again.
Right, like I said I'd work for 25 minutes and I did.
Or I said I'd start for 5 minutes and I did.
Or even I said I'd put my phone in the other room and I actually did it.
Exactly. Those things sound small, but they're not small psychologically.
No, because they rebuild self-trust.
Yes, and I think that's what people are often missing when they talk about productivity. They focus so much on output that they forget the emotional side of it.
Absolutely. The way you work affects the way you feel about yourself.
And the way you feel about yourself affects the way you work.
Very much so.
So maybe the goal isn't to become perfect. Maybe the goal is just to become a little more reliable to yourself.
I love that. Not perfect, just more reliable.
Exactly. And honestly, that feels much kinder too.
It does. It feels more realistic, more sustainable.
And more human.
Definitely more human.
Okay, so if we were going to boil all of this down, what would you say are the big takeaways?
All right. First, know what usually pulls your attention away.
Yes.
Second, make the task clear. Don't overwhelm yourself with a giant mental pile of everything.
Absolutely.
Third, work in smaller chunks, so starting feels easier.
Yes.
And fourth, when you're really stuck, lower the bar. Don't ask yourself for brilliance. Ask yourself to begin.
That is so good. Don't ask yourself for brilliance. Ask yourself to begin.
Thank you. I may need that on a wall somewhere.
I think a lot of us do.
And honestly, I think that's where focus gets misunderstood. People think focus means forcing yourself to feel super motivated all the time.
Right, when really it often means just removing a few distractions, choosing one thing, and staying with it a little longer than usual.
Exactly. It's less glamorous than people think.
But maybe that's why it works.
Maybe so.
Before we go, I do want to say one thing to anyone listening who feels like this is a constant struggle for them.
Yeah?
You're not broken. You're not lazy just because you get distracted, and you're definitely not alone.
Not at all.
Most people are dealing with this in some form. The point is not to become perfect overnight. It's just to notice what's happening and make the next choice a little better.
Little by little.
Exactly, little by little.
All right. Before we wrap up, I want to ask everybody listening something.
Go for it.
What distracts you the most lately?
Oh, that's a good one.
Is it your phone, social media, YouTube, email, overthinking, cleaning your kitchen instead of making coffee?
Still too soon, Daniel.
I'm sorry, I had to.
It's okay.
But seriously, let us know. We'd love to hear what this looks like in your life.
And if you want, you can answer in a simple sentence in English. That would actually be really fun to read.
Yeah, even something short like, my phone distracts me, or I keep putting things off, or one thing that helps me is using a timer.
Exactly. Keep it simple, keep it real.
And maybe this week, just try one small change, not 10, one.
Put your phone farther away. Make your list shorter. Start with 5 minutes. Whatever feels most realistic for you.
Because the goal is not to suddenly become perfect.
The goal is to make it easier to do the right thing,
Little by little.
little by little.
Thanks for listening to Learn English Buddy.
We'll see you next time.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.